Okay. Oh, we already have a question. Could you remind us which brushes we are using?
Yes, so we are going to be using exclusively the brushes that came in the gemstone box. So that's going to be the King Art size 2 pedal brush
here. So
and then we've got the Princeton Lauren size 2 round brush, as well as the Raphael size 1. I can't read the label because it's got a barcode over it, but it's also a round, but it's a lot more of a finer tip. So these are the brushes that we'll be working with. These ones all came in the gemstone box, so we're going to be using all the same brushes today.
Awesome. Let's see. Spanaway, Lafayette, California. Oh, Erin, hello. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so more people probably jump in, but for now I will get us started. Oh, here we go. There's some more people. For those of you who don't know, I am Sarah. I'm the co-founder of ArtSnacks. I will be the live stream producer today. So if you have any tech problems, any questions, feel free to message me. I realized for some it might just be a voice because the overhead camera is spotlit, but just know that Sarah will be in the chat. If you need any help, please let me know. Before we get started, I am going to just go over some house rules while we're in here. So first off, please mute yourself while the instructor is teaching. Next, if you feel comfortable, we would love for you to keep your videos on, especially when speaking or during show and tell time at the end, but feel free to leave it off if you'd like to. We use the chat feature. If you have a question or want to drop a comment, we'll do our best to read and respond to them verbally. The Watercolor Snacks team wants this to be a safe space to learn and gain new perspectives, so keep an open mind during the lesson today. And lastly, if you need to head out or leave for a moment, do not worry. The class is being recorded and will be posted to the Watercolor Snacks mix group. Let's see, today is Saturday. It'll probably be probably Monday or Tuesday, so you can rewatch at your leisure. All right, so I am gonna hand it over to Bree, who is going to teach us today. And I'm gonna put myself on mute in the background. So if you need me, Bree, let me know. And I'll also be your timekeeper as well.
Awesome, thanks, Sarah. Hello, my name is Brianna, and I am the resident artist for Watercolor Snacks, and I will be your instructor today. So earlier in the week, I shared with you some class prep that you could do beforehand, and just to give you a gauge of what we'll be working on. This is a session to really just kind of figure out the contents in the box. We're going to practice some brush stroke techniques, and then we're also going to create this little illustration sample afterwards. So for this, we are going to go ahead and start with a full sheet of your paper from the paper pad that came. We're going to be using the Fabriano Studio Watercolor Hot Press. Set that aside. I'm going to move this off screen for now. So we just have this to worry about. I do have a butcher tray over here that I will be using for some mixing. I also just want to point out that if I'm ever mixing colors, it is not you have to mix according to this. It is definitely I'm going to be mixing a brown color, so I'll use these two colors, and you can mix to the desired level that you would like. So we've worked with round brushes before, but I'm going to go ahead and start with the Lauren round brush because it is, something we've played with round before. It's a good way to warm up with. I did put a few drops of water in my paints before starting the stream, and this is really helpful because somebody mentioned in the group that they were having a hard time getting the vibrancy level that they wanted, and that can really just be because the paints haven't had a proper time to activate. So the best way to activate it is just put 1 or 2 drops. I use an eyedropper. You can use a paintbrush. and let it sit for a few minutes. This is a good opportunity to like, mask off your surface and whatnot. So I'm just pulling a color. I'm pulling it. I think it's the indigo blue. No, it's that other blue, the really pretty one. I can't remember the name. In Dantrine blue. There we go. But you can use whatever color you want. That's I'm flinging it on my blue shirt. That's all right. All right. So just pull a color that you would like, whatever color you would like. And I just add some water to it to kind of get it nice and loose. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with one end and we're just going to drag our brush across. And now this is really a good technique because you're going to get a nice fine edge along the top, but then you're going to get a nice kind of jagged edge down there. And you can even see that my pigment started to kind of run off there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time. And just take this opportunity to go slow. If you need to add more paint to it, that's totally fine. And it's really kind of angling it to the side there. Do one more.
Hey Bree, it's Sarah jumping in here. Would you mind just lowering the music just a little bit?
Sure. Nope.
We love the music, but it's just a little overpowering.
Oh yeah, if it's too loud, then it's not worth it. How's that?
A little bit lower.
Okay. How's that?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. And now once you've gotten that, we're going to kind of like angle it to the side and we're going to just do a straight across line. We're going to try and get the straightest line possible. Something to remember with watercolors is that you're always dragging the color where you want it to go. You're not really pushing it. With other paint mediums, you can push your paint into the direction that you want. With watercolor, it doesn't really work that way. So always think of it as we're dragging it along. A analogy I like to think about is it's a dance between follows and leads, and we're the lead. The watercolor is the follow. Right. And if you want to get adventurous with it, we can try taking a line, but we're going to keep it less pristine. And a good way to do that is by holding it further up on the handle up here. So instead of holding it down here where I have more detail and control, we're going to hold it up here. And this is going to allow for a nice organic kind of line to play out. What I mean by organic is that it's not perfect. And we think that because we're not trying to be like super crisp about things, that it would be easy to capture something organic, but we can actually tend to overthink it. So in those situations, the best thing to do is to hold your tool further up on the barrel. And if you get these little skips in your line, that's also another really great technique right there. I'm going to choose a new color now, just simply for the sake of, because we have all these beautiful colors to choose from. I'm choosing the Caput Mortum. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to go and do some little dash marks. You just start and just lightly dash. Kind of cluster them together, stagger them a little bit, group them a little bit. Right. Just take a minute to do that. You can also kind of tap it rather than start and then drag or short ways. You can just lightly tap. Now this is going to affect the distribution of your paint. As you'll see here, bring it up closer. When I just tap it, you can kind of see there's like a cluster of paint and then a little bit of fade out where the water is at. But that's okay because you might find that you prefer this technique versus the dragging dashes over there. It feels like this is a kind of paint Morse code almost. Give you another moment to wrap that up. Get some water real quick. Right. And next, we're going to be using the Raphael brush, and we're going to be following these same kind of techniques. But the difference with this brush versus the Lauren is that it's a much finer tip. So it allows for more precise detailing, but we're going to accomplish the same techniques just for practice to see. So I'm going to pull a different color here. And you can use the same color if you'd like. You can continue to use the same color. I'm going to pull the indigo color real quick. And we're going to, just like we did with the first one, we're going to start with that sharp edge along the top and the kind of jagged edge below it. And that's going to be happening by just angling your brush and carrying it across. Ooh, that was real satisfying. I'm going to do it one more time. So a little fun tip, whenever I'm wanting to create a longer stroke or especially dealing with line art or whatnot, the longer the brushes, the bristles, the more it will hold, but it'll still allow me to be able to keep my fine detailing. So this would be the brush that I would use when wanting to do some really fine lines, or like especially the ones that stretch across a larger area of the page. So we're going to practice some of those fine lines a little bit. I'm going to pull the emerald green color here, add a little bit of water, load it up real nice. So the great thing about the emerald is that it's kind of got some pigment to it, almost a little bit more opaque in range, and you can kind of see there's just kind of paint all throughout it. And so I'm going to take that same thing. We're going to create a straight line here, but I want you to pay attention if you notice a difference between this one versus the Lauren. It's Raphael versus Lauren right now. And the first thing that I notice is that I actually am able to just get that whole second line just from that first pull of paint, whereas I did have to kind of reload the Lauren brush. And that's just because there is more area to hold it in the bristles. The bristles are containing that pigment really well. Now I'm going to do that same technique, but we're going to hold it further up on the handle, and we're going to try and get a more organic flow with it, I guess, a more organic line. And this is also a great opportunity to play with brush pressure. So while you're holding your hand further up on the handle, you can actually press down and then lift up some more, and you can kind of do that throughout, and it creates this beautiful varied line weight. That one was really fun, so I'm going to do it one more time. We're also going to do the same dash marks with this brush versus the Lauren. And I like that while we have two round brushes close in size, I love that they still feel different because they are differently shaped. And this allows you to be able to see the comparison between the two. So we're just going to do some more of those little dashes. We're going to start slight drag right there. Let's create these little textures. And I really like how fine this tip is because it feels like the dashes get much finer. I don't know about anybody else, but this is a technique that I can just kind of get lost in. I'm doing these dashes again, and I'm able to actually get a thinner streak with it. So it creates a whole different texture. This is also a really great texture for like fur. If you were doing a pet portrait or something, this is a really great brush for that. And now I'm going to go ahead and just kind of do the tapping, which gives a completely different vibe and different distribution of the paint. And that's exactly what we want. What's even better is if you are doing these little tapping dashes and whatnot, and your paint starts to run out, and then you can just kind of run with that and follow or let it fade out as you're going. You keep going off the page if you want to. They just kind of keep getting more and more lighter as you go. I'm going to allow for another moment. I feel like I always save the most interesting brushes for last, and I think that's just because they're so unique that I feel like I want to take extra time with them. So I'll be honest, I am pretty new to working with a pedal brush, but I will say it's been a lot of fun. So I'm going to go ahead and wet my brush here, and I guess the only color I haven't pulled from is the neutral tint. So we're going to follow the same techniques that we've done so far and just kind of like stretching that across and see how it goes. So we're gonna take the pedal brush, we're gonna load it up with some paint, and we're just gonna try and see what our line looks like as we kind of drag it across, starting from the tip, angling it towards angling it downwards, yes. So it's almost parallel with the paper, and we're just gonna start and we're just gonna kind of spread it across and see. There's not much variation in that particular technique, but it can still be fun just to get used to how the brush works in comparison, especially because this one has got a flat, like it's flat in comparison to the other two, which are round. And next, we're going to paint a line across, but we're going to use the varied pressure points because the pedal brush is really, really great for capturing varied pressure line weights. There we go. And that's just by adding some pressure, kind of lifting up, adding some more pressure, and try and just get it all in one stroke without it really leaving the page. I'm going to do it one more time, and I'm going to try and have the line weights opposite of each other. And this can be a really great pattern if you just filled up a page or a section of your illustration with just this, it kind of works as like a really nice pattern.
Hey, Bree, it's Sarah jumping in here.
Sure.
We have a comment from Jessica. I struggle with the brush control on the petal / cat tongue brush. I can't get the tip to do exactly what I want. Do you find that you struggle with that too?
Well, I would say yes, because I don't feel like this particular tip allows for much control in that area. It's not that it can't have control, it's just a little bit harder, which is kind of why using this in comparison to the round brushes, I definitely feel like I have more control with the round brushes. This one, it takes a little bit of work. So, but I do see what you mean, and I definitely would say it's probably not meant for the super specific, like teeny tiny corners, if those are the kinds of details you're wanting to capture. But let's see. We're going to be working with the petal brush for a little bit here, kind of getting some control with it. So thank you for bringing that up. So let's go ahead and I'm going to take the indigo blue here. And on the practice sheet I've got here, well, let's go ahead and do the little dashes first. We're going to build our way up, because we're going to do some swirls at some point, but let's build our way up. We're going to start with some dashes, just kind of like how we did there, but we're going to do it with the petal. And we're just going to kind of start from one end, take your time with this. And we're just going to kind of drag it and see. The best way to gain control with any brush is to go slow. Go slow and really learn how your brush speaks. You hear me say all the time, like, you're learning how to speak with your paints, just like by mixing the colors, getting familiar with your palette and stuff like that. But there is also speaking with your brushes. And I'm just doing these little, I kind of have my hand rested onto the surface of my desk right here. And I'm not letting it go anywhere. And I'm kind of, these brush strokes are really only within what my fingers can move with. If that kind of helps give more of a visual of how to do these little dash marks, which, by the way, these little dash marks kind of remind me of a combination between arrowhead rocks and fish because of how they range. And I'm going to point this out here. If you'll notice right here that I can get a smooth line for most of it, but there is these little tiny dashes that just kind of emerge in the paint stroke. I'm just adding a little bit more color to that, just so you can kind of see. And that was kind of natural in the brush. And that definitely makes me feel like I don't have as much control. But if I instead approach it with a different mindset of, this is the brush I would go to for some more organic, I like to call them organic strokes or organic textures. And that's what these really specific brushes are kind of for, is to use for very specific things. I will say working with this brush kind of reminds me of calligraphy brushes almost, not quite, but in its own way. It's a very specific tool used for very specific things. So now we're going to take that same kind of mindset. I'm going to add a different color here. And we're going to start with laying down a kind of petal swoop, but then we're going to kind of meet with another petal swoop on the other side. So try taking 2 petal swoops and just kind of having them at varied angles. Start from the outward, but also start from the inward and see what you capture with that. Now I'm thinking leaves or birds when I'm doing this particular one, but the idea is to just get a couple of them and group them together. And you can even do 3 of them. You don't have to stick with just 2. And this is going to be good to help kind of get a feel for how it goes in different directions, how this brush works in different angles, different directions. And I like how I can start from the center and drag outwards, as well as starting from the outside, dragging inwards. This petal brush, even though it's called a petal brush, reminds me very much of leaves. So a lot of leaf work. All right. Once we've gotten that, let's practice some swooping techniques. So we're just going to be doing a variety of these kind of swooping lines, and you can do them however you'd like. I'm going to use the red color, the carmine red. I believe it's the carmine red. Because I'm not going to lie, it kind of reminds me of flamingos. And I thought that was kind of fun. But you can use whatever color you'd like. Use whatever color is inspiring for you. And by doing this, we're just going to start from one side. I've kind of got my brush angled up higher. And we're just going to kind of branch. And we're just going to kind of swirl it and swoop it, kind of letting different line weights happen as you are dragging the color around. Start and see how small you can get. And then kind of gradually get larger, going small again, a bit larger, and then it's just swooping around. These are not perfect by any means, and that's kind of the beauty of it, but it's really fun to kind of get this. I will say this little swoop right there, ooh, not on my brush. This little swoop right there has that little white patch in between the line right there and the line right there, and that just has happened with the brush naturally, and that is a little happy accident that I would have spent way too much time on trying to capture, but you can just kind of get it organically. Anytime you find those, embrace them. I'm going to do kind of like a large swoop. Fade it out. I'm going to try and do a spiral and swirl. I'm going to do some smaller just swoops, not necessarily deep swirls, but just some swoops. And I'm just kind of following the pattern that it's going around. Like if I've laid down those swoopy lines, I'm kind of just accenting them. This is definitely not the brush I would go to if I want very detailed control on a certain edge or something, because it's got a lot of personality to it. And I've noticed I'm going in one direction, so I'm going to try challenging myself to paint it in another direction. I feel like I have a lot of little S shapes going on. We could even do kind of like a snake back, just kind of bring it down. This brush would be really good for hair strands, like locks of hair, especially if you were doing like some wavy hair. This would be a lot of fun for that. Okay. So my page is currently full, so I'm going to pull another one. If you find that your swatch page is full, you are more than welcome to use the backside of it, or you can use another piece of paper that if you wanted to preserve your Fabriano paper for later assignments and stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and pull one more because we're not quite done with the swatching yet. Oh, did I just hit the camera? I totally did. My bad.
Hey, Bree, just jumping in here. We are
Sure.
30 minutes in.
Awesome.
So got about an hour left.
Awesome. All right. So coming back to our palette, I'm going to grab a new color. We're still working with the paddle brush here. I'm just kind of getting some paint that's nice and loose. And what I'm going to do is we're actually going to start to attempt some petals. So we're going to actually try and draw just like a little flower, and I'll show you the example I have here. It's just this little flower with these little petals. If you know flowers specifically, you are more than welcome to go for something specific, but I don't. So I'm just like, well, whatever moves easily with my hand. And we're just going to start creating these petal shapes, kind of gathering at the middle. You could even maybe make a starfish if you wanted to. And the idea is to just get familiar with this. Again, this petal brush is really great for organic elements. There we go. Now that one is really wet with water, so it'll take a while to dry. So I'm going to try another one. You can make as many as you want. You are not limited to just one. Just going to go ahead. Add this here. Now, the good thing about hot press paper that I've noticed is that it dries fairly quickly, or the paint dries on it fairly quickly. And while our little flowers are resting there, we can attempt to paint some leaves. Some more specific leaves. For that, I'm just taking a little bit of a mixture between emerald green and indigo. But you don't have to mix any colors if you don't want to. And I'm just gonna use the petal brush here, kind of map out the leaf shape. I'm gonna try a larger one. And then you can even kind of squiggle out your outline there, so it doesn't have to be a full swoop. And I think we're going to start moving towards our illustration piece here in a minute. After we messed with our Faber-Castell watercolor pencil. So if you have yours on hand, we're just going to take 2 swatches of this. So we're just going to go ahead and kind of scribble it. I'm going to try and go slow because I feel like it's shaking my camera. I'm laying down a pretty rich amount of color. I'm going to make 2 swatches of this. And this is optional. If you're still working on other areas on your swatch page or brushwork, by all means, continue. This is really just, this is nothing new necessarily, but it is pretty fun. And I'm sharing it because I never know if everybody has seen it before or not. So I've got 2 swatches here to test with, and they're laid down pretty thick. I'm going to take my petal brush because it is the largest brush that I have, and I'm just going to dip it in some water and just glide it across. You can kind of see the beautiful watercolor effect that you gain from a colored pencil, which is awesome. And you can even kind of drag it. You get a faint kind of colored watercolor pigment. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take some of my indanthrine blue on the petal brush. Rather than using just water, we're going to use a diluted paint, and we're going to use that to activate it. And this is a good way to combine the 2 colors to kind of create something new. But by activating your watercolor pencil with paint instead of water, it's a completely different effect. And that's just something I like to do whenever I've got the chance to combine watercolor with watercolor pencil. Right. Now with that, we're going to be moving towards our illustration demo here. And the goal of this is going to be to practice on the gemstone here. I added texture into the background, which we're going to save for the very last in case we end up running out of time. But you don't have to have a sketch. I do work with a sketch, so I kind of have laid out, and I don't think you can see it here. I don't think the camera picks it up at all, but there is a very faint outline of a geode. And what I did with that is I just kind of took a pencil, very loosely sketched this kind of squiggly ovally shape, and then kind of went around that, mimicking the curves and whatnot slightly. And then just kind of added the back end with the rock. So for starting this piece, we're actually going to be using the wet on wet technique. So I'm going to use the same method and make my background green. So I'm going to pull from the emerald green, but you are welcome to use whatever color you'd like. And I'm going to add some water to this just to kind of get it loose because I don't want it super pigmented. There we go. And always have a swatch on hand. I like to have either a small swatch card of the paper that I'm working on, because this will give me the true effect of how my paints will receive on my surface. So before we add color, we're going to just take our petal brush, because again, it is our largest one, and we're just going to start to lay in water everywhere. Now, because we don't have like a large wash brush for this, or a mop brush or anything, I'm working kind of quick, and I'm not really using big long strokes to spread the water around. I'm just kind of moving it here and there. Because again, on hot press paper, it will dry quicker. And you don't want too much water. You just want enough to have a light sheen on your paper. I'm going to see if the camera will pick it up here. So you can kind of see the reflection of my ring light there. It's not puddles of water. It's just a little bit. And so I'd say start, you can, if you find that you have too much water on your piece, you can always take a paper towel and dab up the corners. Taking my paint here, I'm just going to start to scrub it out. And I don't want it too dark because I want the background to still be able to have saturation. So the lighter, the better. And I'm really just kind of pushing most of the corners out, or most of the contrast out to the corners. So this way the center is a lot lighter. And I am overlapping on my sketch. That is practically invisible to the camera, but I'm describing it for you here. I am overlapping on my sketch a little bit because if you're using a faint color, you should be able to overlap onto your area and it'll be just fine. There are some times when it's good to preserve your subject matter and prevent other colors from bleeding into it. But there are other times when if it's faint enough, it's fine. And it just kind of blends with it really well. So you can kind of see that it's very faintly. The camera picks it up not that great, but you can see that most of my color is towards the edge and the center is kept white. And if by adding the water to it and then the paint, it's what helps it kind of give that nice gradient effect instead of the kind of harsh lines that you'd get. If you did it wet on dry, you'd probably get a pretty defined line here. It looks pretty faded, but once it dries, you will definitely see a line between the two. So we aren't going to let that rest for a minute because we need to dry before we move on to any other parts. And if you're still laying down your color, that's totally fine. What I'm going to do over here while we wait is I'm going to add some kind of textured or some contrast detailing in with this petal. And I'm using the petal brush for it. Again, just to kind of familiarize. And I'm just going to kind of do these little strokes. I want there to definitely be some more paint than water. And we're just going to kind of do these little petal strokes because they've got creases and shadows and color variations. I'm kind of just starting from the center. And this is just a little exercise to do while the paint's drying. And if you're still working on your background, that's totally fine. This is just a little doodle to kind of get more familiar with the petal brush. You can start from the outwards and drag in, or you can start from the center and drag out, whichever you prefer. Bring that up closer so you can see it. But we're already starting to get some detail on that little flower, just that little blob of paint that we laid down. It's already starting to get some depth to it, which is very encouraging. All right. So by now, my piece is mostly, it's dry enough at this point that I can begin working. So with that, I'm going to pull some more Indanthrene blue. I'm really in love with this blue color. I've never really had the chance to work with it before. And it's very new to me. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a diluted version. And all that is just bringing your really pigmented paint over and just adding some water to it. Because again, always starting lighter. Because with watercolor, you start lighter and you build the layers to dark. And it's always a good idea to swatch your card or swatch your color before you lay it down. I think it does need some more pigment though. All right, taking the Lauren brush, getting it wet with some water, and then adding it into the color to pick it up. What I'm going to be doing, we're going to be starting to get this kind of crystal gemstone effect. And how I'm going to show you exactly how I did that. So starting in one end of your area, I know you can't see the sketch of this right now, but you're just going to very lightly sketch. And I say sketch because it feels like you're kind of sketching with watercolor. So you're going to kind of sketch this little this little square type shape. You're going to do a couple of those. You're going to keep those white, but then you're going to drag the color out around it. And it's just kind of a variation of laying down random octagon shapes, hexagon shapes, squares. I mainly just stick with squares in varying angles. You could do triangles, but the point is to get kind of blocky, more block shapes. And you want them kind of a varying perspective. So some are like a little bit more sideways and some are a little bit more straightforward. It really doesn't matter. I actually don't overthink this step at all because it's too easy to overthink it. But whenever you're doing large areas of random clusters like this, you definitely don't want to overthink too much. And it's just kind of like every so often, I'm just going to add a little square texture here. Now this is going to take a few minutes. So just kind of enjoy the process of this. You're just going to kind of do that all around. We want it light at first, and so you'll see that I'm actually carrying the same swatch of color over to quite a few different places. I'm not really loading my brush frequently. I'm just kind of carrying it over and kind of fading it out where I can before moving into another square or another shape. And the idea is to just kind of create the illusion that there are varying shapes, varying angles and edges within this geode. And you'll notice that I'm still kind of following the same edge. I'm not really starting from over here and then moving over there. I'm kind of branching out and around from where I first started. And we're just continuing to basically think about building color around these little blocks of light, because that is what we are essentially trying to do. We're preserving our highlighted parts, so the parts that are reflecting the light around it. And we're just adding color around our highlights. And I'm moving in quicker brush strokes because it helps me not to overthink. If I sit there and I tediously, sketch out each shape, it will take forever. And if it feels like it's not perfect, don't worry, it's perfectly fine. That is excellent, because we don't want it to be perfect. We want it to be like a natural geode effect. And if you find that your paint is dry on you pretty quickly, add some more water to it. Add some more water and let it just kind of carry around. Taking the time to fill up this whole area. Make some larger, make some smaller, some larger areas, smaller areas, some shapes of, not just different shapes, but different sizes as well. I think that my favorite part about geodes, or any nature, honestly, is that there's no wrong way, because it's organic, it's nature, it's forgiving whenever you're trying to capture it. And so there's really no wrong way to, create a gemstone. They're going to have wacky angles and whatnot all the time. Right. Now in this, you can kind of see what ends up happening is that I ended up having a darker spot right here. And that's actually okay, because we do want to add some depth. Moving on from that, we're going to start to increase some of the depth here. And here we're going to kind of do the same thing. We're kind of following the path that we've already laid out, but we're just kind of blocking in new squares. Because when you think about it, gemstones or geodes have those sharp angles. So you want to kind of capture some of that square effect. And part of that is just by adding shadows into certain sides. So different angles, kind of capturing them. So we're not kind of filling the whole space with color. We're not accenting all of it, but we're accenting some of it. So we're going to have, you basically have your white tone, a medium tone, and a deep tone. And that's oftentimes how I like to go about with shading, is I try to view it in a triad. I try to view it as a light, a medium, and a dark, because that just kind of simplifies things down. So always look for where your light, your medium, and your dark are going to be. I think they call it, I know there's a mid-tone and a deeper tone. I can't remember the exact terminology for it, but maybe I'm thinking of backgrounds, foreground, middle ground, background, but either way. So I'm just kind of trying to block in these little areas. And I'm going to throw this out there. If you find that your palette starts to dry up on you, the best thing to do is take a little mist bottle and spray it. And that's going to help to keep your paint nice and wet without having to add a bunch of water that dilutes the color. And if you find that you're coming across some areas that are still wet from your previous layer, that's okay. Having some areas that are more crisp and some that are more blended is not a bad thing. I'm holding this up higher to the camera in case anyone needs to see it more. And by doing this, we're taking the opportunity to deepen areas within that are maybe like deeper in the gemstone, where there would be, less light. There would definitely be more shadow deeper within. And if you're finding that it is just kind of becoming a little hard to look at after a while, you're more than welcome to take a step back from it. So I'm going to pull back from that particular area of the piece for now. And I'm going to go ahead and move to the next side. We're going to start to create this rock effect here. And I'm going to take I'm actually going to take the petal brush because it's going to, no, we're going to keep the Lauren brush. Sorry, bit of a detour. I am, however, going to use the petal brush to create, I'm taking a neutral tint color. There's not a lot of mixing in this particular tutorial, and that's okay. There'll be more mixing later on. But I'm going to take my Lauren brush because it's nice and fat and stubby in comparison to the Raphael. And we're going to start, and I'm just going to go in with a wet on dry. And I'm going to start to, I'm following the line of the rim. I'm starting to follow the edge right there. I'm kind of making this edge really kind of crisp. I'm also doing this now, this way you can actually start to see where my gemstone is shaped because the sketch is not good. And there is definitely some like rough outer edges going on. It's definitely not super smooth because it's a geode, and the geodes are like really rough on the outside, but they're very gorgeous on the inside. So it's rough around the edges. Now I'm not taking too much time worrying about depth with this because you can always add more depth. I really want to make sure that I'm capturing the underside of my geode as the darker part because that's where the less light is going to be shown. And I'm just kind of applying it like so. Now this, somebody has mentioned to me before, I tend to use watercolors like markers, just in the wet on dry application, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It can cause more streaking in my textures than I would necessarily be striving for, but it's not a bad thing. At least not with rocks. I don't worry about it too much with rocks. Because rocks are all about texture. All right. So once you've laid out your general shade for where your rock is at, you will notice there's different varying lighting, which is exactly what I want. Because I don't want it to be a solid color. I want it to kind of have some variation. And part of how I do that is just by starting darkest on one end and then fading out to light. Like keep going until it fades out. And by having smaller brushes, it's actually kind of great for this because it allows, it doesn't allow you to fill up your brush too much. You're only able to fill up your brush so much. We're just kind of playing with it and pushing it around. There we go. All right. Now with that, I'm going to give a moment if anybody is still working on the outside of their geode, or if you're wrapping up a particular area, go ahead and work on that. And just take some water. Next, I'm reaching for my kaput mortem. I could be mispronouncing that, but it's all I've got. And I do tend to use my bigger brushes whenever I'm pulling paint to make a pre-diluted, selection to pull from. There we go. Words are hard this morning. All right, so taking my kaput mortem color, I've added some water to it so it will flow easier. And we're going to go ahead and do this kind of ring around the geode, because that's I think what some of them, not necessarily all of them, tend to have, because you're thinking about it, you're cracking into some rock there. Bound to be some textures. And I'm using the Raphael brush for this specifically, because it's got that nice fine detail. So for this, I'm just starting, and I'm just going to kind of try and lightly add a ring right around the edge of this geode, kind of following it, not exact, but kind of letting it be a little bit rough. We're just kind of keeping it parallel and having different line weights and different pigments. So if it's a little bit lighter and a little bit darker, that's actually a great thing. And you're going to do this again around that ring. So kind of like how you would draw a circle, and you draw a circle around it and around it and around it until you have like a whole pattern of circles around one object. It's kind of what we're doing here. And I'm not keeping it super pristine. I'm kind of letting there be breaks within the lines. And even some odd squiggles here and there. It doesn't have to be like as uniform as 3 different rings and whatnot. And so we've got a nice crust, I guess. I'm going to actually continue to take this neutral tint color with the Raphael brush, and I'm going to create the outline edge of the geode here. So it'll be different than the kaput mortem rings, but it will still blend with the geode.
Hey, Bree, it's Sarah jumping in.
Mm-hmm.
We have about a half hour left.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No problem.
And this is just to kind of show where the edge is of our geode there. Going back, I'm going to pull a little bit more neutral tint because my color is fading a little bit. Now, if you did take the time to add a few drops of water to your paints before starting the lesson today, you may notice a very buttery consistency, which is just kind of wonderful. Going back to my Lauren brush here, and I'm going to take a somewhat concentrated version of the neutral tint. But what we want to do is we want to start to create the more textured effect of this geode, and we're going to deepen the contrast even more with it. So you can kind of see it looks pretty good. Like this looks pretty good right now, but we want some more. We want it to feel a little bit more rough, and so we're going to be adding some texture with that. By taking the Lauren brush and the same neutral tint, we're just going to be using a deeper contrast of it. You're going to start from your darkest edge, and you're just going to do those little dashes, just those little dashes. And we're going to do them just kind of quickly and kind of overlapping. You can hold it up so you can maybe see a little bit better. So right here, we're just going to do this little dots and dashes. Watercolor Morse code. And we're just going to it's kind of the same concept as stippling. If you've ever known about the stipple effect, it's just kind of you're using like shading with dots, little tiny pen dots. And the more cluster that you have together, the deeper the shadow. And the lighter it is, the less you have, the less dots you have. So I'm doing quite a bit of the clustering here. I have to angle it a certain way because my light is reflective on my surface. And I'm kind of having the darkest edge continue to be the very bottom of the geode because that's where it's receiving the least amount of light. And then as I start to move up, maybe start to add a little bit more water to my paint intake and maybe less of the pure pigment. I'm just kind of scrubbing that around. Nope. Going a little bit on the outside of the edge there, and that's okay. We're just going to make it part of the geode. The geode grew a new edge. Why not? The outside of this geode kind of reminds me of the outside of an avocado. I'm just going to add a little bit more deeper contrast on the edge right there. Kind of allow it to fade downward. And right here, I'm still doing the same effect, but I've got way less pigment on my brush, a little bit more water. And I'm just kind of letting that, letting the diluted version of it kind of take shape there. And you can even soften out some of the edges. Having some edges blended and some of them softened is really great. Just going to transition this a little bit better. Here we go. And if you find that your geode needs it, once this has all been dried, you can actually go in and deepen some more areas and create an even deeper contrast. You probably achieve that by adding some more pigment. I don't like to add too much pigment with the geodes because I like it to be really translucent feeling, sparkly. But depending on the angle of your geode, you might find that it's like, well, technically it'd be deeper in this particular angle or along the edge or something. And so you can add that in if you feel like it needs it. You don't have to. All right. So with that, we're going to add some texture to our background here. Now I laid down an emerald green base, and I want to go ahead and add some leaves. And it's just kind of those little clusters of leaves that we were working with the petal brush. You can do whatever you want, though. I just wanted to be able to use the petal brush to justify a background. And so leaves is my natural default when I'm not sure what I want to create. And so I just use leaves, but you can use something else. Like you can create swirls, you can create polka dots, you can create palm trees, whatever you would like, or ferns or something. So with this, I am taking my emerald green and some of the indanthrene blue, and I am going to make a slight mixture. And this is simply to just dilute the green. The emerald green is very, very vibrant. So you choose how you want to mix it, if you want to mix that. If we're creating a bit of a teal green right here, and I'll show you a swatch of that in comparison with the emerald. Never pull from the dirty water. So you can kind of see the difference in the contrast between the straight green and then just adding a little bit of blue of your choice. And it doesn't have to be a lot. So with that, I'm taking the petal brush here and I'm just going to start creating a pattern of little leaf clusters. And I think I went with 3 And the thing with patterns to remember is that you're going to have areas that disappear. So they'll either disappear along the edge or they'll disappear behind your subject matter. And it's really important to pay attention to those. Otherwise, what you end up with is just a white, like a light ring of no activity around your piece or along the edge of your piece. So like right there, I'm just not adding a little tip. And here it's just going to kind of go off the edge. And I'm not having it super close together because I want to be able to add a filler in between. Again, just a great opportunity to get used and to the petal brush, familiarizing yourself with it, going in varying directions. And because it is a larger brush compared to the other two, it's covering a lot of area really quick. That's something I can tend to forget when it comes to painting, is I tend to forget to change up my sizes of brushes. And it even happens whenever I'm doing line work. I forget to change my pens because I'm so focused on all the fine-tuned details. But the different size brushes and stuff, the different size tools are there to help streamline the process. All right. So once I've gotten a nice block of the pattern laid out, I'm actually going to take my Lauren brush again, and I am going to be pulling just from the straight emerald green, but we are going to be using a more saturated version. And this is just to kind of help tie in the emerald green color of the background. And I just did single little almond shaped leaves for this, just really simple. Didn't want to overthink it, just kept it simple. Kept it fun, kept it loose. And this also adds another bright color. So your bright colors are tending to come from the geode, but also the leaves in the background. But because these leaves are smaller, it's not so predominant. It just kind of adds some more texture and some more vibrancy. And this is literally just going to be filling up these little spaces.
Hey, Bree, jumping in here. Aaron asked a question in the chat. Has anyone ever found a geode?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, I found a geode, but I found it in a store and they cracked it open for me. So I think that's cheating.
Right. I will say I've never found one, but I also haven't had much experience with nature. I did, some of my friends recently went rock hunting and I think they found some geodes though. So I didn't realize that you could actually find them.
Nice. If you found a geode or a gemstone in nature, drop your story in the chat here.
Yeah.
Got about 20 minutes left.
All right. Well, this piece is almost done, and then I'm going to do the washi tape peel, and then we can have some show and tell time.
Awesome.
Try to keep the washi tape peel in the video now. And there we have our geode. And I like how they're very different. They are similar, but they're definitely different, as geodes should be, because they're all unique. Yeah.
Did you double washi tape?
I did. I was about ready to explain that. So I've
was
explained
gonna
this
say.
before, but I'll explain it again. I have two different types of washi tape that I use. I use one for mounting and one for edging off, because this is a 1/4 inch. And I like having the ability to just have an exact 1/4 inch, because then I don't have to be like, wait, it's crooked, because my lines are always crooked. So I use one for quartering off the actual border of the piece, and then I have one for mounting it. So you get two washi tape peels in the same illustration.
Emma, I see you would like to verbally say something. Hold on. I will unmute you. Go for it. What would you like to share?
Thank you. I don't know why that's making me giggle, but I have had the worst artist block, maybe since our last class. And so thank you for lifting my art block.
Oh, yay. I'm so happy. Our
It's
block
supposed
is
to
the
be hard.
worst. We all deal with it.
Thanks for sharing, Emma.
You're both wonderful people. I don't know why I did this. It's not how Zoom works.
Thank you for that, Emma. We appreciate it. Who knew that rocks would be so inspiring?
Right. And there we have it. Ironically, even though these are, extremely different, this is probably the most close in detail two illustrations have come, at least for a class. Normally one is drastically different than the other.
They came out pretty good. They look like rocks.
Yep, very
Yay.
pretty rocks.
Awesome. So I am going to open it up to show and tell time. So if you would like to show and tell, oh, I see Barrett. Is that how you say your name? I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I'm going to spotlight you so we can see your geode. Can you bring that up to the screen again?
Move it down just a little
Pull it
bit.
down just a little bit. There
we
you
go.
go.
I love it. It definitely feels sparkly. Excellent job.
Great work.
Thank you for sharing. I like that you kept it so tiny too. I like working on smaller surfaces myself. Thank you so much for sharing.
All right, I see Erin has a virtual hand up, so I'm going to spotlight you, Erin. Feel free to share your show and tell.
I just wanted to share a little bit of obsidian, some of the obsidian that I've been finding, which is going to be great with the that neutral tint that we got in this box.
Oh, yes,
And-
definitely.
Yeah, and then I put the mark making. I really was having fun with all that mark making. I put it inside this little elephant shape on this page
Did you do the mountains with the mark making too?
here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so this is all with the mark making, and then I was doing like gemstone inspired stuff on there.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really, really fun to just sit there and play with the brushes for so long.
That's a really unique way to practice the brush strokes. I love that.
Well, it
That's
was
really
interesting
fun.
because the what you were having us, sorry for the parrots, what you were having us do was a little bit more loose, but I was trying to stay within a controlled space. So it was a good
Exactly.
Yeah.
Brilliant way to word that. I love it. That's fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I see a virtual hand up with Emma, so I'm going to spotlight you, Emma. Show us what you've got.
Thank you. So this was during the mark making stage of the class. And I
Look at
really like the King art brush. And the
Mhm.
little, it looks very organic.
Yes. I love how you use the dashes around as a border of your swatch page. I love swatch pages, you guys. They're so much fun.
You would love the past few pages on the sketchbook, especially this one.
Beautiful.
Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for
Of course.
sharing. Love it.
All right. I see Alyssa, you have your virtual hand up, so I'm going to replace spotlight. All right. Show us what you've got.
So I have a couple of swatch pages that
Ooh, look
I
at
play
that.
around with. And
That
then
looks-
I couldn't decide on a background, so I went with my usual splatter.
I love splatter backgrounds. That's one of my favorites.
So-
Oh, that's gorgeous.
So yeah, that's what I did today. It was a lot of fun. So
Fantastic.
I really like doing crystals and rocks and paint. Those are some of my favorite things to paint. So I'm
That's
glad
awesome.
to add another one.
Thank you so much for sharing, Alyssa.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to spotlight Maria. You've got your virtual hand up. Show us what you've got.
Awesome. So this is so much fun. I've just started doing watercolor in the last like 5 months. So this is my swatch page. I was really angry about this part. And then I was like, just let it go. It doesn't have to be perfect. Oh, still working on that, getting in my head. And then this is my geode. I had a lot of fun with the background.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. Welcome to Watercolor Snacks.
Yeah, welcome.
Let's skip over to Caitlin. I see you have your virtual hand up.
Your bag.
Hi. This is my geode. I didn't do much of a swatch sheet. I was a little
okay.
getting set up. So it still says my mic is muted, but I don't know what's going on. Anyway.
We can hear.
Okay, good. But I really like, I guess I never realized how a geode's like a sparkly avocado. So I kind of enjoyed taking on that shape for it.
That's exactly what I thought when I did my first illustration. I was like, this looks like an avocado, and I don't know why.
And I don't know, I guess I really enjoyed the process of like knowing what a geode looked like, but not just going off of your reference image and not trying to like imitate exactly what it looked like, but more just the feeling of a sparkly geode. And that's a fun exercise for me. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Beautiful. I
Thank you.
love it. Excellent.
Sharing. Anybody else like to share? You can give me a physical hand raise. You can do a virtual. I've got my eyes on everybody today. I'll just read some feedback. Let's see. I'm also glad you said that too, because I was like, oh, I love my avocado geode. Yeah, this is a sparkly avocado.
I love it. Sparkly avocado. That's just going to go down in history. A sparkly avocado.
So funny. Great feedback. Angela, also great feedback. Had a lot of fun. Still painting the center of my geode. I'm really enjoying this part of the process. Bree, tell us about that, the sparkly technique that you have been practicing. Where did you pick that up?
Yes. So I actually picked it up. Let me see if I can dig it out. It was a piece I was doing for, there's a challenge called Funguary going on. If you will follow any of my personal work, you probably have seen me post it. But it was this one particular piece.
I'm gonna spotlight
it.
your your overhead camera so we can
Sure.
see.
So I do a lot of this as my personal work, and I was creating a geode for the first time. And I'm thinking, how do I create that? Well, with watercolor, your highlights are your lightest part of your page. So it's really kind of working with the space around it and making those highlights pop. And so I just kind of started going through it. You actually see some of it in a reel on my Instagram, some of the process of that. And so I kind of fell into that. And then I realized, hey, we could just do a geode, and it's something new that I could share with you guys. So I was very excited by that. So it was a total happy accident, just exploration of the process. So, and I'm very excited that it fits with this box.
Absolutely. I love that it was a happy accident. That's how most good ideas happen.
Yes.
Just checking the chat again. Erin says it occurs to me that plastic wrap would also be good for the inside of geodes.
Yes. So I have posted the tutorial about plastic wrap in the Watercolor Snacks tutorial group. Would you guys be interested in doing that during a class that's at any point in time? Just like actually practicing with some saran wrap on a live stream class.
Professor Boyd, I have an issue.
You
I
have an
don't
issue. What's wrong?
I don't have plastic wrap.
Oh, that's
But I have
fine.
tin foil.
I think wax paper might work in its place. I mean, it won't be the same, but it could potentially work.
And I do
If
live
you want
near-
something that's water resistant.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. You're fine. It's a valid thing to bring up because yeah, not everybody has plastic wrap. So save some packaging. You could use it with bubble wrap too, although that will give you much more of a uniform honeycomb effect. But yeah.
I also see some people are commenting. This is the first live stream for the gemstone box, and we're getting some comments about the tin that the paints came in. They all came with a little magnet on top. So you can keep it on the tin or you can put it on your fridge. But I guess I'm curious if anybody had any, not challenges or anything like that, but when you were curating your little set inside the tin, did anybody have any strategies with that or anything they want to share?
I have one if nobody else does.
Kick us off.
Okay. Whenever I first put it in, I was struggling a little bit with, they were still moving. So what I did is I removed all of my paints. I bent these a little bit, and then I kind of used the force from the pans to kind of bend them out. So this way it kind of helped to pinch them in a little better. They still move around somewhat. Another way to do it is you can actually use magnets at the back of them. So there's these sticky magnets, and I just cut off a piece of it, stick it to the back, and with the magnets combined with these little ridges, really helps to solidify them from moving.
Great feedback. I saw, Emma, you had your virtual hand raised. Did you want to add something? You're good? Thumbs
Yes,
up?
please.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know if it's like a motor skills thing, but I
Okay.
couldn't get them to stop moving in that palette. So I switched them into, how do I do this without getting paint? Well, I can show you with a different one. And so I switched them into a palette like this.
Oh, nice.
It looks like a little, you could even do it with a Mentos? What are those mints that come in a box like this?
Altoids.
Altoids, thank you. You could do it in an Altoid can. And then I just basically did the same thing Bree did. But I put my little magnet on it.
I will say it's been a while since I've used a pan like this. And so it took me a minute to remember, how did I secure these the last time? Because I use mostly these little tins as well with my collections. But yeah, I really do like these because it's more palette space.
I see a hand raised. Is it Beret? Can you pronounce your name for me?
Spirit.
Barrett, okay, thank you.
Great name.
So this tray part, the silver on the white, if you gently pull on that, well, maybe more firmly, or you might have to get some kind of tool to push on these little buttons on the back, you can get that silver part to come off. And then you have room for that whole thing to put half pans in there.
Nice.
And you can make them be still by, I've used glue dots. If you've ever made cards, those little bitty glue dots, you can just put those on the back of the half pan and then push it down and it'll stay.
I never thought about glue dots. That's kind of cool.
You can also use that putty that you use to hang stuff on the wall.
You could also use meter eraser too. Yeah. Works kind of similar.
But I like glue dots the best.
Yeah, I could see why. It's actually, I'm gonna have to try that because my magnets don't always stick. So the glue dots would probably be the answer to that problem.
I'm just imagining everyone after this live stream taking apart their tins and finding the dots. Great feedback, thank you.
You have to be careful that you don't bend the white part.
Right.
So it's sometimes it comes right off and sometimes you have to mess with it for a while.
Thanks.
Pry it off with something. But good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you. We will have, I'm not sure if they're already loaded yet, but we do have extra tins available in the ArtSnacks shop. So if you want to fill up another tin with half pans, or you break yours because you took it apart and you want to get another one, we will have some more available. Awesome. Let me just look through the chat real quick. We got about 3 minutes. I see Erin left us, no problem. I moved the magnet to a more colorful tin. Totally get it.
Oh yeah.
Sherry says you could really fit 14. Wow, I've never thought about putting more half pans in. That's a great idea.
So I've got one right here. This is actually holding gouache. It's not completely full, but it's the same size. And if you turn it to their sides, you can actually fit more pans along the side there, but I've squished some in there. Like, it's great if you're not planning to pull it out. But I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14. And then you can technically use the center part as well. So I think you can fit like 17, 16, maybe.
A lot of paint. And for the ones that you just showed us, do you buy the pans and then use
Yes. So
to fill them?
let me show you. I've got pans of different sizes. I have both half pans and quarter pans. Oh dear.
Emma, I see Emma is giving us a visual of her entire pans.
Yes. Oh, look at that color range.
Nice.
So you can actually buy half pans and quarter pans on Amazon in like packs of 100 for like 10, 15 bucks, something like that. And then I've always had just like magnet strips that you just cut and you just stick. There's a sticky side. These don't work that great. I like the glue dot idea a lot better. But this is just because whatever tubes that I get, I like to make my own half pans. I feel like I'm preserving a lot more paint when I'm reactivating versus just pulling straight from the tube. So that is something you can do with your watercolors.
That's really a smart idea. Sometimes I feel like I like squirt some paint out of a tube and then I don't use all of it. And then I just like, you can't put it back in the tube. So putting it in the pan seems like a really great way to you know, change your painting habits.
Yeah. I think I do that with all of my tubed paint. I put them all in pans at some point. I see we've got a watercolor snacks cat on board.
I'm gonna go over to Holly. She has her virtual hand raised. Holly, would you like to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, when I do the watercolor tubes into the half pans, I use an extra fine Sharpie and write on the side of it what the brand is and what the color is, so then I can make sure I'm refilling my pan with the same paint.
Yes,
that's
I do the
important.
exact same thing.
That's a great tip.
Mhm. I have a key code that I use for all the brands because I can't write that small for every brand name. So I have like DS is Daniel Smith and so on and so forth. So it helps a lot.
Oh, we can go on and on with organizing watercolors.
So much. There is a live chat
Mhm.
feature in the Watercolor Snacks group on Mix where this conversation could shift over if people were wanting to share more things.
It's a great idea.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right, so we are at our 90-minute mark. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Happy Saturday. Bree, thank you so much for your time today. The recording of this will be posted to the Mix group probably on Tuesday. Lee is usually the one who does that. He's out on Monday. So if you want to rewatch this lesson, you absolutely can. And I'm seeing so many more pets. This is so exciting. Watercolor pets. Awesome. So Bree, any last words?
Thank you all so much for joining and for sharing. I love seeing everything you guys are working on. And thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to come and paint with us today.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you. Thank you both.
One more comment. There is a question over on the Watercolor Snacks Mix group in, I believe, Livestream Reflections, asking what are some things you want to learn using the gemstone box. And if you guys have anything that you want to suggest or things you're curious about, please drop them there because I check back to it all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay,
All
that's
right.
it.
Thanks, Bree. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. We'll see you
Bye.
soon.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you, amazing people.
Thank
Bye.
you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.